Captain's Log Supplemental.
Hey Jeremy, you know those race cars you're busy building?
Yeah, I do. I
You,
got one
you,
that I'm looking at every day.
you know what I don't see you working on?
You don't see me working on the amazing Sentinel system yet.
That's true. It would take all of 10 minutes for you to have one.
And it's very quick and easy to install.
It is. It is. And we could watch you when we are not at the race with you and see how you're doing. And then we can call you up when you get out of the car and tell you everything you did wrong.
And I love that because so many years I've been driving and not been able to see what I'm doing.
I know.
And now we can.
I know. You know what I'd like to do with the video? My most favorite thing is I take the video and I load it on YouTube and then I send it to my coach and say, look at 26 minutes and 17 seconds. Look at this one lap and tell me what I can do better. And every single time, you know what they say?
Everything.
Exactly. Precisely. So with the Sentinel system, you get instantaneous feedback plus useful feedback that unfortunately is accurate for my driving.
I think it's accurate for all of our driving.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's probably true. Yep. But you need to get one in your car, sir.
Yes, I do. And with the discount code that you're going to tell everybody, they can save 10% on this awesome system.
Yep. Trouble free. I haven't had an issue getting video every time we've gone out with the Sentinel. It's always worked. Can't say the same for some of the other systems we've tried. So I don't know. It's on the podcast notes down there. Don't do it while you're driving, though. We like to have our listeners live. It's good.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
You are. We need to get your microphone fixed, my dear.
Yeah, we do. It's a connection to the computer. I don't know what it is.
I know what we should do. We should put a podcast room together and use the really good microphones, and then you and I can be sitting right across from each other at a desk, which is your dream to do a podcast with me in the room. No, it's not at all. No, because then she can't play with Instagram and everything during the podcast, but that's okay. Miss Vicki, we've got a guest.
Yes, we do.
That was the most wandering intro I've ever done so far. But anyway, one of the benefits of coming on the podcast is that you are an honorary producer of the podcast. So one of our friends, Mario, said, hey, you should have blank on the podcast. And I said, why, yes, we should. So guess what? He is on the podcast.
Yep.
From Ecotec Miata, we have Cameron Recknagel. Welcome to the podcast, Cameron.
Thanks, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we hope you say it at the end. That is always the goal. So you never know. Sometimes people come in hot and they walk away going, what was that? But, we try to keep those down to a minimum. Hopefully not too many of those episodes in the past. So Mario said we should have you on. I looked up Ecotec Miata. It looks like a much better solution than Miss Vicki and I came up with our track-focused Miata. So could you kind of go with a brief history of you and eventually we'll get the Ecotec Miata at some point during this podcast? Maybe in the beginning.
Sure.
Who knows?
So I'm a Lemons racer like you guys. That's how I got my start. About this will be my 10th season actually. So I've had one car this entire time, and it's been a Miata. It started out as a 1.6, and that motor actually never blew up. And so, but we wanted to go faster, so we put in a 1.8, and we blew that up. and then we put in another 1.8, and we blew that up. Did a 24 hours at um, Audubon Country Club with Lemons, and blew up another motor. And I said, to hell with these Miata motors. I'm done. And that was the time when Ecotec Miata was kind of just getting started. And I went out and bought a racer kit, swapped the
Mm.
car, and blew that motor up. So
Oh,
we've gotten really good at blowing up motors, as Lemons is much akin to. That first motor, however, was, I think, DOA. First track day we did with it, I pulled the filter out, and there was lots and lots and lots of metal in there. So it was not the motor's. Well, it was not our fault. It was, I think, the motor was not really set for us, as I guess the
Yeah.
way I would describe
So rumor has it that we have raced together. I believe, as with most of our people that we've raced with, you beat us at that race. But
yeah.
you know, don't
it. I
don't
don't
think
know.
don't think it's special. I mean, everybody
I,
does.
I I don't know where. I can't remember. I think we finished middle of the pack. If that we had some issues. We literally broke the steering wheel that race. That was a
Hmm.
first. So the steering wheel snapped. Don't buy cheap eBay steering wheels.
Mm-mm.
That's a bad idea.
How do you
Buy
snap the steering wheel?
You have enough vibration that a couple of bolts come loose, and you've got three holding them together, and then the center section of the wheel breaks. And I was not in the car. One of my drivers was in there, and he comes over the radio, and he says, "I can't finish this race." And I said, "What? What are you talking about? The steering wheel is broken." I didn't believe him. He came in,
You're like, quit
showed,
whining.
yeah, quit
Will
whining.
you
Keep
stop? Just
driving.
finish
This is
the
a Lemons race. We don't quit.
Just keep round and round. It's fine.
He said, "I can't steer the car. The steering wheel wants to break in half."
Don't be a
So
baby.
yeah, so he pulls it off, and he pulls the car, able to bring it into the paddock, and before he gets out of the car, he takes the steering wheel off the steering column and throws it at me, and I go, "Huh, that's broken."
Mm. I think that was the same race where Miss Vicky was in the car and she said that I can't drive the truck anymore because it wasn't turning. And I
What?
said,
Oh.
what do you mean you can't drive? She's like, I just can't do it. And I'm like, just come in. And I hop in the car. I get in the car. I'm on the out lap, and I'm like, no, this is not safe. Because nobody believes that just keep driving, stop your whining, whatever. You could not turn with like 80 pounds of force trying to spin the wheel. It was not going to turn. And I'm like, you can't
Was
We
respond.
kept losing our power steering.
Yeah.
Yeah, was this the one where you had like sand in all the
Yeah.
joints of the
Yeah.
steering? I
Believe it or
listened to this
not,
podcast
not
recently.
recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
It's like
recommended.
we don't know how to maintain a vehicle
Yeah.
until
It was,
somebody said you change the things that go whir in the
yeah.
off season. Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So,
Check the joints, you
yeah.
shake the wheels.
Everything
We
was
had no
fine. Nothing
clue.
moved. I mean, literally, nothing
At
moved
all.
at all. And then I think we went through like I've lost count of how many power steering pumps we went through. I mean, we were getting really good at changing them. So if you ever need anybody to change a power steering pump on an S10, you just call us over. We got this down.
Yeah.
Oh.
We don't even have power steering in the Miata. We skipped that whole thing. It's one less thing to break.
Well,
Now,
yeah,
what does the Miata look like?
it's small, kind of
No,
round.
well, yeah, but his
we didn't
Miata going out there.
we didn't get there
My
yet.
my car is black, red and white stripe down the middle or down the side, asymmetrical stripe. Not unlike how your NB is. It's
Hmm.
an NA. We made our own steel roof out of some roof skins, and it is very racing looking. It does.
Okay.
It looks.
All right.
I
I was
had
trying
a
to, there's a couple Miatas out there, so I was trying to identify which one was yours.
yeah. It's got 9 lives wing on the rear, in a big red air dam up front. It looks
Cheaty.
it it looks like it. I got some pretty good grief the first time we rolled it out of the trailer. One of our good friends, I don't know if you're familiar with Lemonade or not, or Buzzworks.
Hmm.
They're a very fast team in the Midwest. They rolled
Future
my car
podcast
out. And
guests, they just don't know
yeah,
it yet.
yeah, they'd be great on the podcast.
You're an
But
honorary
he said,
producer now.
I'm happy to help. But he said to me, he said, Cam, Grid Life's in Chicago this weekend. It was at Gingerman. So they were making fun of me for having a car that looked too fast and too good for lemons. Don't get too close. It's definitely a 50 at 50 car for
Yeah.
sure.
So, Lemons racing for 10 years,
Hmm.
Miatas the whole time.
I've raced with a couple other people. Did Champ Car with some friends in an E46.
Okay.
That's Buzzworks team. They're good friends. Um, but for the most part, it's been my car, my team, and the build. I run everything: fundraising, the engineering, the mechanics work, and then I drive too, like most Lemons guys.
Yeah. Except for the fundraising, and nobody seems to raise funds. They just seem to spend funds, but that's a different
Spend
story.
spend funds, find people to support my addiction with
Hmm.
things like brake pads and brake rotors, ECMs and stuff like that.
Not a bad thing to do. So lots of Miata experience, lots of Lemons, lots of other series. So naturally, the old joke about how do you make $1 million? You start with $10 million when you're in racing. So
I was
so
going to
you
say a billion, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you decided, hey, I can have a business about these Miatas. This sounds like a plan.
Well, so I was a user before I owned it,
The
and
first
I
first one's
found
always free. That's how all good
yeah,
businesses
I
start.
don't know about free, but I had started. I found a niche, a hole in the kit and a need, and that was in the form of a internal hydraulic throwout bearing. When you swap a Miata with an Ecotec into a K motor and a lot of the other modern four-cylinder motors, the intake and the exhaust is opposite of a Miata. So you end up with the exhaust on the quote wrong side of the car.
Mhm.
And so naturally, you want to send the exhaust pipe down the passenger side, and right there in your way is a clutch slave.
Mhm.
And so you have to package exhaust past that. And oftentimes you're either touching it or so close to it that the exhaust heat cooks the fluid inside of the slave. Well, I got tired of literally missing shifts and not being able to downshift into third. And with our Miata 5-speed gearbox, and thought I gotta find a different way to do this. And so I designed a plate and used an off-the-shelf slave from another vehicle that was sized appropriately for the Miata OEM master cylinder, and it's worked flawlessly since the time I put it in. I don't I if I just got lucky or what happened. I had some help with the machining of the parts, but overall it was just a let's try this. What's the worst that could happen? Worst that
Oh,
could happen is I blow up the transmission, but we were willing to try anything at that point. Well, it went well. I tried it. We tested it for about a year before I put it out on the market and started selling it to people. And I wanted to sell it to more people. So I got in touch with the owner of Ecotec Miata about a year ago. And he said, I asked him, can I put this on your website? What do we need to do to figure out how I get paid and everything else? I think that this would sell well because there's lots of people that are already buying it, but I would like exposure. And he said, well, how about you just buy the company from me?
What?
Yeah, yeah. So we started having a conversation about that, and um, he was already thinking about doing it, and I guess my name came up. I knew I talked to the guy, kind of bench raced with him a fair amount, but never kind of expected something like this to come from him. And I was immediately asking, okay, what does that look like? How much does that cost? And we came to a pretty agreeable price. Um, and I was able to fund the purchase based off from the sales of these clutch slaves. And I sell them to Ecotec guys. I sell them to K-Power swap guys, K-Miatas.
Hmm.
If you
Mhm.
use a Miata transmission, it'll work. And it's been extremely reliable for me. I've yet to replace any parts on my Alpha prototype.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So that was January last year, and it took about 9 months for us to actually come to an agreement. He had some things that he needed to take care of and some orders, and that this kind of took longer than I would have hoped, but ultimately we came to an agreement, and he sold me the company as well as the remaining spares and everything else that he had left. Uh,
Nice.
and I
Uh,
took at that point, took the website down. Not down, but I basically put everything into dormancy. And I took 3 months to do a couple of things. One, I wanted to redesign the oil pan. I wanted to improve some things on it and then relaunch it. And I did that in November.
nice.
Hmm. So, let me see. Benefits of the Ecotec swap versus other engine upgrades?
So the biggest thing that you see up front is the cost. Um, the swap kit, it was competitively priced before. I made sure to continue that competitive pricing with what else is out there and available. So it's inexpensive, and motors are they're littering junkyards. I get all of my race motors from a pick and pull in Grand Rapids, Michigan, called Lucky's, and so far I've been quite lucky with them. And I'll walk in there basically with a tire inflator and a leak down tester, and I'll test all the test motors before I go and pull them to make sure that they're healthy.
So is it like a
But
case swap for Miatas is what it is?
a lot of it's similar in how much you have to do, but there are some differences. We don't we reuse the stock subframe, so the subframe doesn't need to come out. There's no cutting of the subframe, which I think has to be done with a couple of the different K swaps. And it's quite quite a bit cheaper than a K swap for
Yeah.
the.
Because they actually put the Honda motors in Miatas, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say that is probably the next most comparable swap, most closest thing to a competitor that I would have. But they do a lot more sales than I do. I can promise you
Yeah.
that so far.
It's like a case swap designed for a Miata.
So yeah, in a lot of ways, it's if you take a look at it inside of the engine bay, it looks like it almost belongs,
Uh-huh.
and it runs very smooth. So while a K swap has to remove the balance shafts in order to clear the subframe, they have to change the oil pump and do a lot of those things. You don't have to do any of that with Ecotec.
Right.
The oil pump's on the front of the motor, and the balance shafts are above the crank.
Right. But you're
So
still using a
you,
Miata engine though, correct?
no, so it's an Ecotec. The Ecotec is the engine. It's a GM 2.4 liter motor from a Chevy HHR, a Malibu,
Okay.
a Pontiac G6. I mean, GM literally made 4 million of these motors and put them
Oh,
in
so
all
you have
sorts of
plenty of
economy.
stock.
Yes.
So performance wise, if you were to compare an Ecotech swap to a K swap, is it plus or minus the same, or is it?
It all de Like a K motor, it all depends on which one you get and how much you want to put into the motor. So bone stock, a 2.4 engine code LE5, which has variable valve timing and a drive-by-wire throttle body, makes roughly 165 to 170 horsepower at the wheels in a Miata. From there, you put a stand. If you choose to put a standalone in, I can supply you with a tuned GM ECM, or I can reflash one for you based off from exactly what the car came with out of the yard, and you can run with that. And you'll make roughly 165, 170 horsepower.
Hmm.
Put a standalone in, much like what the K Miatas are using in the Haltech. Uh, you can do some very simple upgrades and make 185, 190 wheel horsepower
Okay.
for basically the cost of the standalone, roughly $800, which I can help supply, and then a $20 junkyard cam. So this is something that I pioneered and have tested. You take you take another intake cam from another motor and you put it on the exhaust side. So in a Miata, this is pretty common to take the exhaust cam and put it on the intake side. You get a little more lift and you pick up 10 horsepower or 5 horsepower, something like that. I don't remember exactly how much that exhaust intake cam swap is worth, but it's a marginal upgrade.
Hmm.
For this, you basically pick up 15 to 20 horsepower across the board, and you extend your usable horsepower range from basically shifting at 6,000 RPMs, and you basically move it up to 7,000 too. So you get an additional 1,000 RPMs of usable horsepower, so it
So,
doesn't fall off.
so if we were to talk to our friends who've raced GLTC, would the Miata fit in there?
So I've actually raced GLTC with my car. This was Midwest Fest back in
Oh, the little one, just Midwest Fest.
2022. Yeah, it was a little one. I was pretty fortunate. I got somebody's ticket that had crashed out at Coda, and so I was able to get a spot. Um, Adam was nice enough to help me get in, and I did mid pack.
Hmm.
I had some issues with my differential, had some cooling issues, and then we'll get to this in a minute. But I had some issues with the oil pan that was currently in the car.
Oh,
Uh, there's another Ecotec Miata that was running at the same time, and he was at the front end of the race, and his name is Matan Rosenberg.
Yeah,
He had a
Matan's. I
red,
didn't remember that was an Ecotec. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
a Corvette guy
he
right
had
now.
He's now a Corvette guy, and I've told him that he's got to come back. He's got to come represent, and he's like, "No, I'm good with my Corvette." So he's happy.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we
but
won last year, so
yeah, yeah, I'm
he's
not going to argue with that kind of success.
yeah. But you could
But I
come in
think
zero place next time if you got an Ecotec. But anyway, first place is just the beginning.
right. So it's a competitive platform that can be raced against the K Miatas at places like Gingerman. Um, I'm not sure how it would do at places like Road America. But it's a very torquey little motor that doesn't need to spin to 9,000 RPM.
Hmm. It's kind of cool. We have
Yeah.
friends who race a Miata. It's a K Miata swap and
Mhm.
GLTC. So
wow.
he might be listening. You never know. We hope people listen. It's always fun if they listen.
Are we talking about Scott Robertson by chance?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I know Scott pretty well. I actually I've told people this story. I don't think I've ever put it on the record, but I met Scott at Gingerman Raceway, and he'll remember this. And when I hope he gives me a call when he hears this. But I literally bumped into Scott. I was trying to start my car, and I wasn't really paying attention. And I was sitting on the door bar, and I started my car without the clutch and without the clutch in, and I literally bumped my Miata into his Miata in the paddock space at Gingerman Raceway, and I felt horrible. I didn't know Scott at this point,
Uh,
so I had to find the guy whose Miata I just hit, and
hmm.
it was beautiful at this point. There's
Hmm.
not I don't think there was he was just doing one lap at that point, so his
Okay.
car was in really, really good shape.
Hmm.
I had to find the guy whose Miata I just hit and then fess up to it. And he is the coolest guy in the paddock you'll ever meet.
For sure.
He looked at it and he said, huh, like and I'm thinking I'm gonna have to spend $1,000 in body work or something like that for this car. He says to me, how about you make a donation to the charity that I
Yep.
support and buy me a bottle of brake fluid? And I think my jaw hit the floor when I bought him whatever his flavor of brake fluid was at that time. It was a gift
Yeah.
for sure.
Well,
Super guy.
I, I, I think I'd be more scared of Becky's response than Scott's response because Becky takes serious care of her machinery and don't mess with Becky's cars.
Yeah, she was there and she was putting up, and I know Becky too.
Yeah, she's awesome.
I see. I don't know if she still works in Grand Haven or not, but I would see um, Mooncake drive by my house all the time when she was on her way to work. I live right in Grand Haven, Michigan. So,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, so Ecotec Miata, it's a competitive platform inside GLTC. It's extremely effective in endurance racing too,
Hmm.
and that's what I would say it's primarily most effective and easiest to implement for places like Lemons.
So Ecotech. Sorry, I had to wander away. We had a dog who decided that she wanted to go out and she wasn't waiting. So the Ecotech that you're referring to is the GM engine. Is that turbocharged or not?
It comes in both.
Okay.
So there is a 2-liter turbo. Um, there's a non-direct injection, so port fuel injection, and also a direct injection version of that motor. And then there's a 2.2 liter that only came port fuel injected. And then there's the 2.4, which is also only naturally aspirated port fuel and direct injected.
Okay.
So there's a lot. There's a couple different variations of the motor.
Right. Because, it's kind of hard to keep track sometimes with all the different trade names. So,
Right.
so all of them fit into Miata?
Correct. They
Okay.
all fit.
All right. So we had Miata prior to the one that Vicky's fictionally sitting in front of. She's not
Hmm.
sticking outside because it's cold. And we had a turbo added to it, and it was a tremendous car until about the fifth lap, Miss Vicky.
Yeah.
Once you really got a good hold of it and you started, putting the spurs to it, it would get a little warm. So how does the
Yeah.
the turbo
It had
Ecotech?
a flying Miata when we purchased it. It had a
Mm,
flying Miata turbo kit in it.
The
And
stage two one?
yeah, which is great just for like street driving, but it's not great like if you take it to the track or something. It just the car
sure.
just gets way too
Yeah.
hot. And of course, we didn't have an extended oil cooler on it or anything like that.
Sure.
I don't think there was.
So so for any turbo car, I highly recommend you use a pretty big oil cooler.
Mhm.
I've not tracked a turbo Miata yet.
Okay.
Um, that's probably going to change here soon. Not
It's
for
called,
lemons,
is that called
for something else.
foreshadowing for
I'm not gonna, I probably won't talk about, I'll give some allusion to it, but I'm probably not gonna go too deep into what's up and coming.
okay.
I've got some things that I'm working on in development right now, but the turbos, they are very much capable on track. They just need an oil cooler. They cool better than a iron block BP. So the typical Miata motor,
Really?
because they're all aluminum. It's an all aluminum construction.
Okay.
So it's a very efficient at expelling the heat. In a race application with a 2.4, the LE5, which is what I have in my car, you can use the stock Miata radiator. So you don't have to upgrade to a thick 2-inch Mishimoto or anything high performance like that. It'll use the stock radiator and cool just fine.
Hmm.
Once you
Okay.
start adding power and revving higher, there there becomes a risk factor with that. And so I typically run a bigger radiator, but you don't have to. Um, my car is not quite stock anymore, and I hope there's no Lemons judges listening right now. I've added some performance here and
There's
there.
there's no judges listening to this podcast.
But I've done it because I wanted to. It's not because I'm trying to do anything nefarious or cheat. I just wanted to make the car faster because it's
You're just
fun from an end.
experimenting. You're testing
Exactly.
things out.
It's an engineering thing for me. I can't stop it. It's a bit of a sickness, and all I want to do is make this platform go faster.
Hmm.
Um, my ultimate dream and goal is at Gingerman. I don't know. Have you guys driven Gingerman?
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay. So I don't know if you've seen the stickers or heard the moniker Sub 140.
Yep.
Um, my goal is to be able to take this car with a reasonable budget on 245 RS4s, so an endurance tire, and go sub 140. And last fall, I turned a 141
Wow.
in a quarter. So it's close. If I were to throw some sticky tires on there, I'd be over 140. But I want to do it on endurance tires with within a reasonable budget. And
That's
that's kind of where
fascinating. That's
it's
really
it's
fast for a Miata.
yeah. I mean the K swap guy's been doing it for a long time, but they make quite a bit more power out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I'm only making 195 horsepower the last time I was on a dyno. So it's an effective setup, and it's a lot of fun to drive. It's also not nearly as buzzy as some of the other swaps that are out there.
Hmm.
It's a very smooth running motor, as I like to equate it to a Singer sewing machine.
Doesn't vibrate every nut loose without red Loctite, not blue, red.
No,
Okay. All right.
no,
Well, I mean,
you
if you're
can
gonna
use
be
blue.
that way,
Yeah, you can use your blue Loctite.
oh my goodness, I didn't know that was allowed. So, so we did the worst intro ever because we didn't finish it, and we started talking because we were very excited to
So
get to it.
sorry.
No, it's we did it. I mean, never blame the guest because you're. How are you going to be a future producer if we blame you? So,
Yeah.
um, what got you started in racing?
Uh, um, in college, there's a program at several colleges and universities in the US and in Europe called Formula SAE.
Hmm.
And Hope College, which is where I went to school, had a very early stage program. And I kind of grew up around cars, mostly in the restoration area. Like my grandfather restored cars, my uncle restored cars. Kind of skipped my dad a little bit, but he still appreciates fast moving vehicles and actually races on my team with me. So we kind of make it a family affair. It's a lot of fun for us that way.
That background
But
is why you thought it was going to be so expensive to fix Scott's cars, I guess.
exactly.
Hmm.
So I I got involved in the formula program at Hope College and loved it. I did a couple of the dynamic events. I helped build the car. I welded a lot of the surfaces in that vehicle, and um, it bit me hard then.
Oh yeah.
Didn't really know didn't really know where to go after that. Looked into places like Spec Miata, and I kind of had stumbled across Lemons a little bit, but didn't really know anything about it. And then I forget what spurred the Lemons. Oh, we had a friend. My one of my dad's coworkers had a car, had a FC RX-7, and he was racing it in Lemons. And I said, we got to check this out. And he was down at Gingerman for a race, and this was in October sometime. And we went and watched. I said, Dad, we have to do this. We have to go out. We have to find a car. And we have to build. We got to go racing. This looks like way too much fun. And
Sounds, it sounds like a
sounds probably
conversation
similar.
Sounds like the
Yeah,
conversation Vicki and I had on the way home from our first Lemons race. I
yeah.
believe the quote was, "I think we found our idiots."
Yeah,
Hmm.
pretty much.
Very
So
much so.
exactly. So pre-podcast, I think it was pre-podcast. I don't know. I never keep track of when we start and do an intro or not. But we were talking about an upcoming change that just got announced because one of my bucket list items was to do the Thunderhill 25.
Hmm.
The difficulty we had was we live in northeastern Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
which if for the home game players, not close to California. I mean, I think that's the definition, not close,
You
and
could get further, but it wouldn't
not
be
much.
that. It would not
There's not a
much
whole lot
further.
left. Not a whole lot left to go. Keep going to the right there. So, and for audience who listens from Europe, U.S. across is not like one day of driving. It is multiple days of driving. And the hard part is not getting the car there because you could ship the car there. The hard part's not getting the tools because, I mean, you could literally be an idiot and buy the tools. The hard part's the spares. The spares
Yeah,
require
it
you
kills
to
you.
tow across these lumps called the Rocky Mountain, which is I think it's called a hill. At
Well,
least one of them
and in
is.
your case, you've got two mountain ranges to
Yeah,
cross.
yeah, but the first one's kind of compared to the hills out
Uh,
west. They're
it can
pretty
be sketchy driving through Pennsylvania. I've done it.
can be. But we at this point in our season that we refer to this as the beige season because everything is beige unless it's covered in snow. But you said that the Thunderhill 25 may get a different name because it's now just 25 somewhere else.
That's what I saw. Yeah. I saw that this week that the 25 hour is now moving to Ozarks, which
It's in the middle.
for
It's
the
halfway.
it's in the middle. Everybody's got an equal shot at getting
That's right. It's not
guys down in
convenient for
Southern,
anybody.
yeah, Southern California people are probably upset about that. They can't sleep in their own beds that night, or if they would sleep, I'm not sure. Last
There.
24-hour I didn't sleep, so
Yeah. So
24. I didn't do a 25.
so do you do you see this in your future? Is this kind of on the bucket list now that it's halfway? I mean, it got halfway closer to you.
Halfway closer. It's I think it's a 10-hour tow to Ozarks from where I live. Um, I would love to make that happen. A couple things would have to happen first, though. I'd have to have a NASA driving license. I'd have to have a NASA racing license, which I don't have. Um, and I could probably get pretty easily.
I'm not saying that NASA Great Lakes does their racing license school at Gingerman,
But they do.
but they do. Just FYI, not that I went there and did it, or could go again. If I can be easily convinced to go to Gingerman. I love Gingerman.
You, if the stars align, I'm not doing it with my Burt Miata. There's no way. That car has been beat. It's not straight. It's been raced. It was raced before I got it. The
The
cage,
track's not straight either. I just want you to realize, it may be
it's
bent
not.
just right.
I've driven it. I drove it in an E40 in a friend's E46, and it was a very exciting track. And it
Hmm.
is, if you're not ready for it, it's going to eat you. Um, it's going to bite at the very least.
Hmm.
But it is the most exciting, demanding racetrack I think I've ever been on. In that you don't really have any time to relax.
No.
Most tracks you have a couple of straights where you can tighten up your belts.
Hmm.
It's you have to plan for it, and you have a split second to really tighten up your belts unless there's a caution. Which at Ozarks there was a fair number of
We
cautions
all
when we were
adjust.
there.
We all
Yeah,
adjust in a caution.
yeah. So, but I think that that offers a kind of a making it affordable from the travel
Hmm.
aspect of things.
Yeah.
Um, there's ridiculous amount of Airbnbs because it is the Ozarks,
Yep.
Lake of the Ozarks. So we found it when we went with Champ Car. There was a very nice place that we stayed in and had bunks and everything else. So we piled a bunch of guys in there and had a great weekend. Um, I don't know what that would look like for multi-class racing during the night. That that's a bit tricky. I didn't race it at night, so I don't know how well it's lit, but I have to imagine that there's got to
Not
be a
much.
lot of light.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember how much there was lighting, and
Was there? Okay.
it was the first year that the track was open. So they were still changing things and developing things and making the track better, safer, more user friendly. But the paddock space is kind of interesting. It's very much on a hill, and there's not a lot of flat ground. So I don't know how that will be for doing all the um, stacker trailers and stuff that end up showing up for an event like that. But the owner of the track we got to meet when we were there, and it was he gave us the world class tour of the facilities, and they are legitimately world
Yeah.
class. Um, Everything about it, he didn't really seem to spare an expense. It was very nice. Not quite country club, but the nicest, out of middle of nowhere track I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it looked like they didn't shave too many corners there.
No.
So 25 is on your list. Anything else on the bucket list? Any other tracks? Any other?
Uh, I gotta get back to Road America with Lemons. Uh the first was not last year, but it was the year before, and I think it was the first year that Lemons had come back. Yes, it was the first year that Lemons had come back to Road America.
Right.
Um, we started the day in P2, and I had hunted down P1 by turn 5, and I was gone. Goodbye. See you at the end of the race. And I went through, I caught, well, actually, I should say, let me walk that back. Turn 4, I caught him. Guy missed a shift. And so we drag race. I looked in my mirror coming into turn 5 a little too late,
Mm-hmm.
overshot the corner all the way out onto have you driven Road America?
No, Miss Vicki didn't think it was worth going, so she didn't go.
Oh, you gotta go.
Ah, it's what I said.
Yeah.
You have to go. It is so much fun.
It was
It's
a
an experience.
commitment that I couldn't
It,
make.
it is. I don't. I'm sure you had something going on there. It is a long tow as well for you guys. So I overshot going into turn 5, and so he passed me on the inside. So back and forth until we got to the carousel. Left the inside open to me. I went into the inside of the carousel. Gone. Didn't see him by the time I exited the carousel. Went into the bus stop and came out of the bus stop, and then no power. Everything shut down.
Oh,
Start of
Mm.
Sunday morning. Um, Turns out that zip tying your wiring harness too tight
mm.
to a bolt head is really bad for shorting out.
Yeah.
Took us 3 hours to find that short in the wiring harness. It was a
It's so much easier.
colossal disappointment.
So much easier to fix when you know what the problem is.
Yeah, it took us a little bit to work it backwards, but eventually we found it and we got back on track. And we were just there to have fun. That's all Lemons is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You want to race with people
Mm-hmm.
and race around with people that are of your similar speed. And I think you guys kind of talked about this in Mario with Mario and Ian.
Yeah.
You can find anybody to race with in a Lemons race. That's the beauty of it. And it's just fun. It's
Even
just
on a
fun,
track as big as Road America, you can find people.
especially when you got 110 cars.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we do 110 cars on much smaller tracks than that, but
Yes.
that's a different problem. So
Mhm.
now that we officially finished the intro, and after we put the sandwich of the Ecotec right in between, so it's kind of we're going for our second filling. So we're doing like a double decker now. We got the first piece of bread, we got a little bit of the meat there, and then we got our second piece of bread. So going back to the Ecotec Miata, when you took over, you had already done one of these. You had
Mhm.
already felt the good, the bad, and the ugly. So was there any issues beyond I think it was the heating of the slave cylinder and the heating of not the heating, the oil pan issues. Was there anything else
Yeah.
that you thought were causing issue?
So yeah, there's a couple of things going into this that one that I knew about and I was going to correct or change, upgrade, do differently, and that was the oil pan. It was a steel weld, 100% steel, completely welded oil pan. So a thick plate on the top and then a piece of sheet metal welded to the bottom and a pickup tube that was welded to the bottom. There's baffles and stuff in there, trapdoor design, and it works. It works well. The problem with it is that once you start putting torque through this oil pan, a lot of them will leak. The welds can crack. I know some users, they leaked right out of the gate. So this first time they bolted the pan up, oil was coming out of it. And I wanted to fix that. I wanted people to have a better experience. And so I started looking at different options. And I had even talked to the previous owner. He had started with a two-piece oil pan design. I never saw photos of that even, or got his design from that. And so I just started with my own from the get-go. And so now what we have is essentially a 1 inch thick piece of aluminum that's 26 inches long and 18 inches wide. So it's an adapter, an aluminum adapter plate that sits on the bottom of the engine block. From there, I use a stamped steel oil pan from an off-the-shelf vehicle because I wanted something that was easily replaceable, could be found literally at any parts store. Similar to how I designed the clutch slave, I wanted something that if it did fail, I could go find something at a parts store and get us back racing. If I didn't have a spare, or we forgot the spare, or something like that. Wanted it to be attainable in that way. So similar design theory behind the oil pan. Same with the pickup tube. Pickup tube is from another off-the-shelf vehicle that's slightly modified, but for all intents and purposes, it's a OEM pickup tube for the oil pump. I was committed to the design that there would be no welds in the oil pan. There are 4 welds, and they're sticking 2 of the aluminum baffle pieces together. So no exterior welds on this oil pan, and that baffle is then bolted to the adapter plate. That is the upper pan of this design. So if that paints a picture, it's on the website. There's photos of it. You can see how the design was kind of implemented and everything else. The next thing was the engine mounts. There was something that was identified, and I didn't really pick up on it, but I've had this failure myself, that the gusset wasn't big enough on the pan, or I'm sorry, on the engine mounts. So they would crack under a lot of use, endurance racing specifically. And then the steel oil pan would ride on the steering rack, cause issues with the putting play into the steering rack, and then also inducing stress and fracturing and cracking inside the oil pan. So you've got this domino effect there. So I found a company that's local to me that does a lot of laser cutting, and they actually make engine mounts for heavy duty trucks. And so I kind of said, okay, this is what I have. We need to fit this geometry. How do we make this a lot easier? So we thickened some things, we added more gusseting, and then they used their CNC bender laser cutter to basically make these very repeatable and easy to assemble in-house. And so I brought a beefier version of those engine mounts to market. And then I think that's really the only 2 changes that I've made to the kit so far. The rest of it is, and I have a new source for wire harnesses. That I'm not the guy who, you don't want me to put your wire harness together. I zip tie things in the wrong places. That's not my forte. but I've got a guy who I work with that does really beautiful work, and we sell those harnesses on the website.
Nice.
Hmm.
So,
So,
go ahead.
hold on. I lost my way. Hold on. Sorry. So, what new resources or guides for support are you providing to help people with their swaps?
So on the website, you can find a complete how-to guide of how to swap the vehicle. Everything that needs to go into that swap, you can read up on prior to uh, implementing the kit before you ever even get parts from me.
Mm-hmm.
There's additional resources. There's a couple different Facebook groups that lots of users participate in. It's very active community. So if you have questions, people are quick to jump in. I'm also there's two groups. I'm a moderator for one of them, and it's a great resource. And I try to make myself as available as possible. It's I, it's an addictive habit of mine, and my wife gets upset with me when I'm constantly trying to help people out through the kit and answer questions about whether it's performance or a failure or something like that. But for the most part, the resources are online and available to you to try and swap your car.
Hmm.
Scott, you listening? Just,
Ah,
whoops. Was that out loud? I hate when the internal voice goes there. So, so you've been racing this in endurance racing, which typically, I think Adam was the first one to tell us that, every time we do an endurance race, we're basically burning our car to the ground and bring it home, and we have to rebuild the whole thing, which is not that far off from what we end up doing, but that's a different story. But it it handles endurance racing just
Mhm.
like every other engine, even if it's a turbo, no problem.
The turbo's always the great de-equalizer, I think. It definitely it brings the life down of the motor. But I think if you do things sensibly and keep the boost to single digits, you
Hmm.
could be pretty successful. So targeting under 300 horsepower is probably the maximum that I would be comfortable taking something in an endurance format. Unless we're talking about the 25 hour and we have to, really crank stuff up and build a car from scratch and have it be brand new to start. That's kind of what I envision if if we take on the 25. But from my experience, I've had motors go hundreds of hours before something else breaks, and that ends up inevitably takes us out of the race.
Yeah. Okay. So
It's
it's
generally not
it's
the motor.
so it's kind of reasonable in an endurance environment then.
Hmm. Very
Okay.
much so.
All right.
And I'm not, and Miatas are not the only cars that use these. There's several other people that have put them um, into other vehicles. I've got another friend that has put it into a Toyota Celica, and then he moved that motor to um, a 280Z, and now they're putting it into a Mazda 626. These are the same guys, same motor, same drivetrain, and now it's in a Mazda 626 that they've individually swapped and kind of
Hmm.
kind of nutty guys. They're very lemonsy.
It sounds like it. Do they
And
realize there are other engines and you can use like one engine per car? You don't have to keep
they
moving it
they won a
around.
lemons race with it. So that's one up on me. I've yet to win a lemons race, but they have won it with a Toyota Celica. They called it the toilet,
Hmm.
mixing Chevrolet and Toyota. So it's that car no longer exists, but they did win at Gingerman with that car.
Wow.
hmm.
That has yet to even get onto our agenda. We're trying to win an overall. We're just trying to.
I,
So many
the
cars.
times that I've the times that I've tried to go and win, it's been the worst weekends we've ever had. So
Hmm.
I just go fun. I The more fun we have, the more successful we are,
Hmm.
both in finishing and just in the overall experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think so. So you're looking at Ecotec Miatas, basically, as the
Mhm.
website is there any thoughts of, this becoming, I mean, should we start calling you Roger Penske the second? Are we going to, or keep getting bigger? Or are we going anywhere else? Are we,
Yeah. So I took this on in the thoughts that I wanted to grow it into, hopefully a full-time thing. It's not on the cards for this year, probably not for next year, maybe not ever. But I do want to grow it because I see the value in the swap. It has lots of potential. Actually, I had a customer call me today wondering if my new oil pan would work in his FD RX-7. And I was like, why are you putting an Ecotec into a last generation RX-7? But they used it in a Nissan for drifting, and that's what this car is destined for. And they
Wow.
beat the snot out of the motor, and they love it. That works really well. So, do I am actively. I have a new chassis coming to the shop this Saturday, so in just a few days, and
okay,
that is going to be developed um, for the next stage, I think, in the company.
no, cool. Are we keeping that secret, or are we going to have a second episode?
I'm gonna hang on to that one for a little bit longer.
I will let you hang on to it, but we get a second episode then.
Fine.
Done. Easy. See, we're easily bribed.
Yep.
Um, so when you look at a Miata, you kind of like the balance of the car. It's got
Hmm.
low consumables. It runs forever until it doesn't, but that's every car. It runs forever until it doesn't.
Right.
So, how does the Ecotec affect that? Because you've got a little bit more grunt. Do you need to do any other upgrades to stay safe and performing well?
Um, I like to overdo it on brakes
Yeah, same.
because it's it's just, and it's I think it's good that places like Lemons won't penalize you for running the biggest brakes that you want to run. Um, I think well balanced brakes are the important thing to target here, but you're going faster. You've got 60 to 80 foot-pounds more torque depending on which motor you select, or more if it's turbo. You have considerable amount of more horsepower. You're not adding hardly any weight to the car. And so you're just demanding more of the vehicle in the braking zones. So I think I weighed it out to be in the neighborhood of 30 pounds heavier than the BP motors.
Hmm.
So it doesn't change the dynamic of the vehicle. It's not like you LS swapped it and you've got, all this weight up front and you're
Right.
pitching the car. So it still is really close to that 50-50 weight distribution front to rear. So
And
it's very aggressive.
you don't need to do any spring adjustments or anything for the difference.
I mean, I do, but that's because I'm a coilover nut and I gotta have that 50-50 cross weight. So I play with everything when it comes to that,
Okay.
and I want to go faster. So, but I would say if you wanted a good handling car and you just wanted some more power, you wouldn't have to change anything to the vehicle's setup
Hmm.
goes, especially in street application.
Okay. We don't even think about street applications till this point. We're sitting there going, well, let's see
Well,
what
hey,
can we
I
do
have
here?
customers. I have customers that are doing this in a dual purpose vehicle. They want it to
Sure.
be something they can drive on the street. They want it to have street manners. And then
They
they
want to
want
have
it to,
street manners.
I mean, so if your car if you turn the key over in your car and the engine rattles everything on the dash, that's not really that enjoyable, right?
Hmm.
Like you want it to still idle at 800 RPM. You still want it to, be quiet if you're trying to, you want a fun daily driver or something like that.
Right.
But you still want the thrill of being able to take it to the track and beat on it and go fast. And,
Right.
a Miata motor, if you keep it naturally aspirated, you're pretty much limited to maybe 120, 130 horsepower. If you put a lot of money into it, you can get higher than that, but it's peaky. There's not a lot of area under the curve, and that's just a function of displacement.
Hmm.
So this just kind of affords you a best of both worlds, and it like I said, if I'll send you a video of the first time I fired mine up. It's not loud. I put the world's biggest muffler on my car for endurance racing because there is such thing as noise exhaustion.
Oh,
It
for sure.
will tire you out. And so
Yeah.
these guys that are running around in cars that are super duper loud and buzzy and all these things that are notorious in race cars, if you try and do it for 2 hours, you'll just be just toast at the end of that stint. And so I try and make my car as easy and um, least taxing as possible.
Okay. Sounds like you got this pretty much nailed down, sir. I can't think of anything else related to racing, but I can think of many stupid questions that we have at the end of our podcast, which we are more than willing to subject you to a few if you are
Well,
willing to be entertained.
I'd be happy to answer any and all of your questions, but I want to ask first, Miss
Yep.
Vicki, what do you love your Miata the way it is today? Is there anything that you'd like about it if it was, different?
Well, actually, I haven't driven it a ton. I got it for my 25th wedding anniversary. My husband took it and it was my project car that I was building because I originally had the turbo one and we sold that one and he took this one without telling me for a couple months. I thought it was in another hangar somewhere. And then it showed up at an anniversary party. So
Okay.
I went to the SCCA to work on getting my comp license.
Hmm.
So technically, it's only been on the track once
Is it a
since our
spec Miata?
anniversary. It's a
Yeah.
spec Miata. It's built by
Okay.
Planet Miata.
Okay.
Um, so I'm
Well,
working
we won't
on,
ruin it with an Ecotec then, because
so,
it's worth
I
far
mean,
more as a spec Miata.
right.
if you leave me out as alone in the hangar, sometimes they
Yeah.
multiply. I mean, I've seen
So
worse.
I'm right now I'm just trying to understand there's things that I don't understand about it yet. Um, and part of it is the fuel tester in the rear. I'm not exactly thorough on what that is. You know, when they start there's something in the back where you can either check fuel PSI or not PSI, but there's something that Spec Miata
Fuel
does with
sample
fuel.
testing, or
Fuel
yeah,
te
there's a
Either
port.
fuel testing
Yeah.
or level testing or whatever. I don't understand that yet.
Hmm.
Um,
I think that's so you don't run like rocket fuel and cheat.
Yeah.
maybe
They
that's what it
they
is.
put a fuel port on it so that they can
Yeah,
test the
maybe
fuel
that's what
coming
it is.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they make sure you're not running methanol or something where you can really advance the timing and make more power out of it. Because you won't believe what you can make for horsepower if you change the fuel away from pump gas. It's
Hmm.
and that's across the board. It doesn't matter what car you're running.
Yeah.
And you
It's
can
not
run more
great.
compression.
It's not great
Yeah,
for
so
endurance
the other
racing though.
car,
No,
I ended up,
no.
I think I was getting ready to put hood vents in it and try to work
Mm,
on, because I had the oil filter that was going to go in on the one that we had sold, and I was getting ready to vent the hood at the same time with uh, a kit. And honestly,
mhm.
that was just an HPDE car, but I ended up making that two street for track and two track for street. So it was uncomfortable in both places. So at that point, it just became a non-viable car for me. I had kind of outgrown its
Too many
purpose.
race cars, too many street and not enough street car. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of had like a race suspension on it, which made it uncomfortable to drive on the street.
Hmm.
I really couldn't soften
Pennsylvania
it,
roads suck.
and yeah, the roads around here suck.
Michigan's no better. I can promise
No,
you
and it
that.
just got really uncomfortable. So this one here, I even have sticky tires for it, which I haven't even used
Ooh.
yet.
Most race car people say slicks, but whatever.
Slicks, yeah.
Well, we no, you say stickers. She's
Stickers.
not far. She's closer than you are about that.
Well,
She's got. You have who? Do you have Hoosiers for it? Is that what you have?
Yep.
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
stickers.
So
The
everything is,
the the purple crack is what other people call them.
yeah.
hmm.
So I haven't done anything really with it yet, except went and got my working on getting my comp license in it. So I
Okay.
was running around, and they referred to us as bees on the on the track with the other cars. They said, "You all sound like bees coming around."
Mhm.
A swarm of Miatas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going out there with like two other girls to get their comp license, so we kind of have like a little pack that we.
Nice.
So, but
Very good.
yeah, I really haven't figured out how I'm going to race it, where I'm going to place it at, but I'm going to have fun with it. That's all I know so far.
Right. Well, that's the important thing when you have a Miata is just to have fun.
Yeah. They refer to it as either the Duracell or a Nemo.
I
Is
like
it
the
Nemo?
Duracell.
Yeah.
Just keeps on
But
going.
it does look like that with the NB headlights and everything else.
Yeah. So, but I haven't, yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be spec racing. My concern with the spec racing is the fact that they bump draft, and I'm not ready to have it bump draft yet. So,
Yeah, they call I've heard it called Spec Pinata before. I've
yeah.
never been in there with those guys, but I've seen plenty of videos, and it's enough where I'm not interested. I like
Yeah.
much more the lemons or grid life approach to don't touch me and I won't touch you, and
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of rubbing is racing, but not contact is not expected. Completely
No.
on.
So, yeah, I'm learning on where to place it this year because I think it's only like, what, about a year and a half old
Yeah.
from when I got
I
it?
mean, you used it November 23 was when you got it, and then you used it once last year. So,
Yeah. And then we
so
ended up in the other racings. So,
yeah.
we kind of have this past year, we have an 18-year-old getting ready to head off to college. And I
Hmm,
was like, this is like the last year, and I kind of want to spend this last time with her. And then after she gets ready to go off to college, then we're just going to hit the road and have a ball. I just wanted to hold on to this. After this, everything changes, you know?
sure,
So
sure.
that's why the car wasn't used that much last year.
It was a mess. Last year was a
Yeah,
Time to go
mess.
racing.
Exactly. Well, it just snowed another 4 inches today, or it looks like it. I don't know what it
Yeah,
did.
right.
never stop
Out of
today here.
nowhere. So anyway,
Man,
um, Fast and Furious story time questions,
Sure.
Miss Vicky.
sure.
That means you should ask him a question.
Yes. Okay, so
It's
um
660 episodes in, still.
I know I did, I thought that maybe you started off this time. Okay, so what was your first car and what was the worst car you've ever owned?
Oh, my first car was a 2000 Jeep Cherokee XJ, not the Grand Cherokee, the bread box on wheels.
hmm
Um, and I loved that car. That that's I went to college in that thing. It was. I'm not a guy who's had a lot of vehicles. I know that's not typical for a car guy, but um, have not owned a lot of different cars.
Right.
Um, the worst vehicle I ever owned, only because I think it was a lemon straight from the factory.
Uh,
It was a it was a it was a work vehicle. Um, Company gave me a brand new Jetta sedan. It's a manual. It didn't have an armrest, didn't have cruise control. It had would like they like de-featured it.
Wow.
It wasn't just like bones like bare minimum. It was a Jetta S and it had nothing
S
in
is
it.
for suck, not sport.
Yeah, S is for suck. And the transmission in
S
that
is for
car actually
suck.
it would it would shake in fourth gear, brand new. And it took them a little bit to figure that out, and they ended up just replacing the entire transmission. But that was probably the worst vehicle I've ever.
Hmm.
We probably should have Ecotec swapped it. I mean, just a thought.
Couldn't have been worse.
All right. So, in honor of our taping time and the 50th anniversary, favorite SNL cast member or skit? As Vicky shakes her head
What?
approvingly.
Oh, I'm really gonna have to go with Norm Macdonald. The
Really?
guy was a legend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, they paid a little bit of a tribute to him
They did.
during the 50th, and the guy just told it like it was all the time. Didn't pull any punches,
Nope.
um, especially if you're O.J. Simpson.
Nope.
So I'm gonna have to go with Norm Macdonald.
Very well. Miss
Hmm.
Vicky.
So what was the one thing that nobody knows about you that would surprise them? Do you got a hidden skill?
Man, I don't know. My problem is I talk too much, probably. So that I just tell people about me and I want to hear about them, and that's part of why I'm a salesperson. But um, skill that nobody knows about me.
You-
I got nothing. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
got nothing. He's an
I got
open
nothing.
book.
I'm sorry. I really am.
Okay. What is the best car color and the worst car color?
Ooh. Hell, it depends on the car.
I
Um,
agree.
so So for me, it really does come down to the vehicle. I
So
am on,
it's an Ecotec Miata.
well, then it's got to be red and black,
Okay.
but or black and red, more black than red. But if it's a, I'm really partial to the combination of black and white. My, I convinced my father to buy both a C7 and a C8, and he needed to get it in white and then everything else trimmed in black. So mirrors, roof, splitter, wing, all of that. It's all
Hmm.
and wheels. Wheels had to be black. Um, but then I have a '66 Mustang Fastback, and that is other than the Miata, that's probably my all-time favorite car. And that car is done in a like a charcoal, like a not charcoal, a brighter silver and then charcoal silver gray racing stripes. So similar to like a GT350 color
Okay.
scheme.
Did you
And
Ecotec swap it or no?
no, that actually it's been swapped. It doesn't have a 289 in it. There's a 302 in a T5 5 speed. So
Nice.
very fun car, but it's not seen the racetrack yet. I'm not sure it ever will.
Probably not. Don't wanna
I
make
drive it. It's not a garage queen, but I don't think I'm going to take it to the track.
What is your race number and why?
9, and I'm a
That's a
hockey
hard number
player.
to hold on to.
It's so hard to hold on to. Especially in lemons. I have to wait for the season to drop, and I'm the jerk that goes to all the races that I think I'm going to do next year, and I get my number as fast as I can. And there's one I've yet to do the race, so I don't feel bad. Like actually, we trade. I gave it to him. I don't know who this guy is. He wanted 9 for the sinkhole, the race at Lemons, which is the Corvette Museum
Mhm.
racetrack. And so there's somebody in the South that's got 9, but in the Midwest, I'm number 9. And
Okay.
that's because Gordie Howe's my favorite hockey player,
You're not
and
old
he was
enough
number
for
9
Gordie
for the
Howe to be
Detroit
your
Red.
favorite hockey
Oh,
player.
I
Uh,
actually, actually, I watched him play for the Detroit Vipers at the Joe Louis Arena when I was a kid. So I have seen Gordie Howe play hockey.
oh.
All right.
But yeah, I always liked that he had his own moniker of a Gordie Howe hat trick, um, a goal, an assist, and a fight.
Hmm.
So I just liked that I can do it all. And I've kind of just I held on to that number because of that.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Miss Vicky's favorite question. I'm not going to ask it. Don't put the face away. Put the face away. Miss Jen's favorite question is, what is your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time?
Oh,
TV shows count too.
I'm a Gone in 60 Seconds guy. And I
Okay.
think it's because of the Mustang. And that's the my car is painted up very similar to Eleanor.
Hmm.
So I think that's got to be my
Eleanor?
favorite.
Yep.
So there's a 67 Mustang in that movie that's a Shelby, and the paint scheme is just about the same as my car. And so we painted it that way because of the movie.
And the best part is you can no longer be sued for using the word, so you can call it anything you want. Ridiculous. Anyway,
I didn't know that was a thing.
yeah, they were suing everybody for, infringing upon their intellectual property. It's just
Mm.
gotta be kidding me. It's a painted car. It's not even a real one. Anyway, Miss Vicky,
Yeah. What is that car that got away?
he
Got
doesn't have
away.
that many cars. Could be a car you didn't buy though.
Oh,
Could be.
um,
Well,
You
this gone
had
in
it
60
and then you
seconds
got
thing
rid of
is,
it and you're just like, dang.
or you
I
didn't
think
pull the
it,
trigger, whatever.
yeah, I think it would, I still kind of miss my Jeep.
I do
Mostly because
too.
I just, I don't know. I think it was just because I didn't care if it got, beat up or dented or anything like that. And I lifted it, not a, like a 3.5 inch lift, and I put 31-inch tires on it. And I felt like I was kind of invincible. I actually had Corbeau tire seats in that car. I pulled them out and put them in the Mustang. Um, they actually fit really well in that car. But yeah, I kind of I found out later after I sold it to the person I sold it to said, "Oh yeah, we're going to take this up to Silver Lake, which is a place that people in Michigan take their cars to go off-roading and everything." And so I felt really good about who I sold it to at the time. Then I got a call a couple of weeks later from somebody, some mom, asking me if my car was safe to drive down the road because she had bought it from somebody else and found my name on the title. So the guy turned right around and sold the car, and it just kind of felt like, man, I should have never sold that car. I wish I still had it.
That sounds like junk. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. My last one. Miss Vicky gets another one. Uh, are you familiar with the claw game? Have you been to the beach and you play a little? Okay. So you are the master of the claw game. You get to take the claw and you get to grab somebody and pull them out of the car, and you get to drive that car. It has to be a car you've raced against in the past. What car? What track?
Man, I'd love to drive Matan's C5. I would love to drive that car at Road America. It would, or Coda. Can I have two? Can I have two racetracks?
It's your claw game. I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, Matan, if you do listen to this, I want to drive. I'd love to drive your car around Coda or Road America at some point.
And
Or
Matan, if
I'd
you
even
do
settle
listen,
for Gingerman.
yeah. And Matan, if you do listen to this, you are welcome on the podcast anytime.
Mhm.
Miss Vicky, care to wrap this one up?
What is your most memorable car breakdown on road or track? Oh, guys, he just gave us a big old eye roll and a sigh.
Why do I think this is on track? But just a guess.
Story
No,
time.
it's not. It's
Really?
not.
Okay.
Story time.
It's on the street. So that Jeep that I've mentioned has stranded me on a couple occasions. And one of them, my girlfriend, now wife, girlfriend at the time, now wife, uh, was in the car with me, and we were headed to a wedding in Chicago. And I broke down I had a fuel pump go out on me on the Dan Ryan in Chicago
Oh, that's good.
in a bad part of the neighborhood. And
Hmm.
I was able to limp this thing all the way to the hotel that we were staying at for the weekend, but it was run it for 5 minutes, let it cool down for 15. Run it for
Mm.
5 minutes, let it cool down for 15. Because I don't know if you've ever had a fuel pump go out. It's kind of a slow death.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an immediate thing, and it's really it. And this is I didn't know shit about cars at this point. I knew very very little. And I didn't know that it was the fuel pump, and I figured it out, but it was a very um, frustrating experience to say the least.
Excellent. Well,
Mm.
Cameron, before I ask how people would get in contact with you and see if they can Ecotec swap their car, I would like to congratulate you. You now have the record. You have my favorite misspeak of the podcast ever. My wife, now girlfriend, is going down in podcast history.
Yeah. Whoops.
There's so many comments I could make, but Miss Vicky's here, so I'm going to choose not to because I don't want to sleep in the bathtub tonight. Anyway, I think it's hilarious, but that's okay. So, Cameron, back to podcast hosting duties. If people want to contact you, follow along with your racing, perhaps get an Ecotec swap kit for their Miata, Scott, uh, how, how would they do so?
You can visit us at ecotecmiata.ca. Yes, it's Canada because that's where the company originated from, and I haven't changed the email or the website extension yet. I do own the .com, and it will redirect. But you can reach us there or at info@ecotecmiata.ca.
Excellent. And we can't wait to try one. That would be quite fun. I think it sounds like just the little Miata upgrade that the Miata needs because most of the time Vicky's in her NB or sometimes we take our ND there, so it would make it more towards the ND, and
Cool.
that's always quite fun. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Had a great time. Still get the quote of the week though. That's awesome.